Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You know that I like to meet and interview fascinating guys, fascinating people. Well, tonight I got a really interesting guy for you. I met him just a little while ago when he came over to my house, introduced by a friend of ours, because this guy is a film producer and a really interesting film producer. And he's produced a film that is really quite controversial. I watched the trailer of it. We might be able to check it out a little bit. But also, I think he's got a really interesting view on a lot of things that are going on in society today. Black Lives Matter, racism, the economy. We had a great discussion about politics. So I think it's going to be an interesting chat tonight with Marcus John Adams. Marcus, how are you?
I am great, Brian. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to jump on your platform here and just kind of, for one, help me promote this amazing endeavor I'm on, but also to really shed some light and have some honest conversation about what is going on in this world in 2020.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing both your ideas on what's going on in 2020 as well as this movie. But let's just start with, because I think you've got an interesting background, who you are. So who's Marcus Jan Adams?
Well, Brian, I am a 26-year-old. Sometimes I feel like I'm a 60-year-old, especially in the morning. But basically, my backstory is I come from a family of now second and third generation Canadians. My mom was born in Saskatchewan. She worked in the penal system, working with people and trying to that transfer from being an inmate and back into society. My dad was an RCMP member for 31 years, which I'm really supportive of, and he did a lot of work with First Nations and really brought me along and exposed me to all different sides of Canada. I have two older sisters who are awesome and great in their own endeavor. Both one is in the government field and the other one is in the banking financial field as well. Me, myself, what drives me is things of change. I always want to be a movement of change in the community, and in anything I do, I want to see the benefit. And so for the last 5 years, I've been managing restaurants all from the heart of Toronto, right in Yonge and Dundas Square, to all the way out in Milton, to Port Credit. So that's just a little bit of my business background. And then about 2 years ago, a friend of mine from high school named Talua Fayami called me up and said, it's about time that we start this project. And this project is Owl House Productions, which is the name of my production company. And we've been hitting the pavement, working hard, knocking on doors for the past 2 years. And last year we created a web series.
A web series? What's a web series?
So a web series is a lot like what you would see on Netflix or Hulu or any one of those streaming platforms. It's basically a fancy name for saying a TV show on the internet.
A TV show on the internet, okay. And this web series was what about what?
So this web series is called Code Switch. It centers around an African-American female working in the tech industry. And to make it just a little bit more complicated, we decided to make her bisexual, which is so topical, that topic of being bisexual in 2020, being a female working in a men's world, again, very topical. And then also drawing from what me and Talua can really talk about is having a family of immigrants, and you're that first wave in there, and kind of that learning curve to what the social norms are in Canada as opposed to where you were from beforehand. So
sounds intriguing. Sounds fascinating. We're going to take a break and come back with Marcus Jan Adams and Code Switch in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to our chat with Marcus Jan Adams, who wants to tell us about Code Switch. And Marcus, I understand you got a trailer for us.
I do have a trailer for you guys. It really does set the tone for everything that's going to happen in the course of the 5-episode series. I'm proud to say that every person who you are going to see is from the GTA proper. So we really try to keep it as Canadian as we can, Canadian artists, right down to the music you're going to hear.
So here comes the trailer. Hopefully it works.
So where are you from? I like dark chocolate.
My name's Toyin. I'm a Black poly software engineer fluent in everything from Swift to Emacs. So, yeah, I'm every employer's dream diversity hire. As long as they never find out that I was one of Canada's top 10 most wanted anonymous cyber criminals.
How does someone with your talents end up working for a dating app?
This is something real.
Everything's an algorithm.
Everything. Call me when you want to get back to work on something that's actually important.
I cannot let this get back to the guys in my department. I just can't get involved with something like that right now. This could actually ruin me.
I need a trace of creator targeting girls in Toronto.
Any incel with a computer nowadays would be fake.
This guy, he's annoying. I need to resort to less conventional methods.
Women like you, like us, we need to build for ourselves, make our own moves, create our own change.
This isn't about them. This is about you. Maybe actually getting a voice.
They can ignore our words, but they can't ignore our code.
We're doing some cybercrime over here.
They're never gonna forgive me for this.
It's kind of messed up.
Trust me, it's kind of what I do.
Goddamn.
Well, that was quite the trailer. My gosh. I'm looking forward to seeing it. How do I get the show?
How do you get the show is a very, very good question. And the story behind that, I'll give it to you. So right now, we are proud to say that we are streaming on an online streaming service called Afroland TV. They are based out of the States, just like Netflix is as well, but you can get it up here as well. Why we chose that platform is they back a lot of African-American made TV shows, and that was just the easiest platform for us to get onto. As of January this year, we're proud to say that we are their #1 streaming platform show, so that was really, really great for us, good news for us. You can go on to Hogtown Heroes on Instagram and watch the trailer, watch a couple clips from our upcoming episodes, and some behind the scenes footage of how we did it, how we came up to it, and really get to know the actors and producers like myself and Talua Fayami, who created this thing. So Hogtown Heroes on Instagram is your best way to figure out what we're doing next, and if you want us to really stay on the pulse of what we are doing. But yes, you can watch on Afroland TV. And as of last week, we put the first episode on YouTube. So all you have to do for YouTube is type in Code Switch or Hogtown Heroes, and it will show you our page and some more video footage of us.
Now, have you already filmed several episodes or all the episodes?
So yeah, so we are done. Last year we filmed the whole thing. So it took us it was about a 3-month project. We spanned from filming in London, Ontario, and also in Toronto. And we filmed all 8 episodes in about 3 months. So if you are a good Torontonian, you will see some places like I know where that is. And that will be fun throughout the series to see that, and all the cool spaces in Toronto that we kind of expose to people who wouldn't necessarily know it.
Now, I only saw the trailer, but the main actress, I presume, looks like she's a pretty good talent.
Gina, I want to say, is a godsend. Gina has jumped off the page. When she walked into the room for our first casting call, I turned to Talua and I was like, we don't need to look at anybody else. She was at the time 19 when we filmed it. So really dug deep, and proud to say you will see lots more of Gina, if not in with our future projects, but she is now on Netflix herself. So look out for Gina. She's there on Netflix as well.
On Netflix doing what? Films or?
She has a new show coming out. She has a new show coming out for herself. I can't say too much of it other than it is coming. But yeah, if you liked her acting, you will see her other places as well. Now
tell me a little bit about the storyline. So you've got a Black female in the coding business that's bisexual. Like, what more did you want to throw at her?
Right. Well, basically what we decided to throw at her is all kind of the stereotypical elements that a woman goes through. And Tulu and myself, when we initially started writing this, we said, yeah, we have sisters, and we know by talking with our sisters what they go through, but we needed to include, to get the true voice of women, we really to include them into the writing room. So our writing room went from the two of us to 3 other women of different nationalities to help us write this. And the story arc works as this. Toyin is working on a dating app, like Tinder, like your Bumble, like any one of those ones out there, and created an algorithm that puts the most compatible people together and leaves kind of the guesswork out, and it's not kind of you're just shooting in the dark and hoping you find somebody. It generates all the profiles together and puts what would be most compatible to you forward. Her boss then decides to put in a race element into her program, and thus ensues the panic from Toyin, because Toyin wants people to race. Yes, dating and race. And basically, if you are a white person, you'll only be shown white people, and if you are a Black person, you'll only be shown Black people.
And what, she disagrees with that?
She strongly disagrees with that, because Toyin is a very free-spirited person, and that fight between the two, and her boss coming in as a executive and thinks this is what the market wants and this is what people need, and society isn't ready to be that open-ended with their dating, ensues the panic. Then her dating side comes in, and you see 2 of her love interests in there, and kind of you see different aspects of Toyin come out, and shows that people are multi-leveled in their character of who they are. You see Toyin at work, you see Toyin at play, you see Toyin in different relationships, and how she is vulnerable and can be vulnerable, but can also be so strong in the face of adversity. And it also shows the aspect of humanity where we're a little drawing our feet back, and how we are a little bit hesitant, and how some of these outlandish stereotypes still kind of rule the business world. And you can definitely see somebody who in this story of Toyin. So basically it ends up with Toyin taking all of this information, all the data, and exposing the bigots of the world and how really truly what people are. And it opens up everyone's profile, and everyone will see what you said to so-and-so and who you said to this and how you really look in the dark.
Really, that's fascinating. So tell me, do you think people are ready to date people of all different races?
I can say from my own perspective, my family is mixed right from the top. Mixed ethnic races right from the top. My aunt is married to a Caucasian. My uncle's married to a Caucasian. My dad is now married to a Caucasian. So we're mixed, all the way mixed through. So I think we're really ready now. I don't think it's as polarizing now to see 2 different races walk hand in hand down the street. I don't think you're going to get second looks. Maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it would have been like, whoa. But nowadays, I think it is a little bit more common for that to happen. But also, you do have that demographic from back then that are still uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And
what about religion?
Religion is a tough one. I think religion is a tough one because religion has rules, and race really doesn't have rules attached with it. Like you're a part of a race and you can be whoever you are of that race. But a religion is like, you got to do this, this is wrong, and that's wrong. And you don't really get that mandate with a race. So I think we're coming out of that whole aspect of two different religions can't coexist together. But I think the problem with that is when you add children into it. And that's the tricky part. And I think that's where it would fail, because then the ultimate question is, are we raising our children this way or that way? And then you're choosing essentially which is the right religion for your children.
Okay, well then I guess I gotta also ask, given that your main character is bisexual, what about sexuality? Are people willing to date someone that's bisexual?
If you are a bisexual male, it is a tough world for you. Just because I don't think females are ready to accept a male that had male partners. I think it's very different the other way, unfairly so, but I think it is very different the other way, that females can be bisexual and can have both sets of partners, and either sex who dates them won't really be as turned off if it is a male who has two different sets of preferences.
Fascinating. Well, I look forward to, I'm gonna have to check out what's it called, Code Switch?
Code Switch, yes.
I'm gonna have to check out Code Switch on YouTube and see the first episode. And
please do. Strap in. It's a lot.
And if you're interested, please introduce me to the actress, because I think what you've described of her sounds pretty fascinating, and it would be a great interview if she would come on my show as well.
You know, I would say she would 100% be open to that. She is a very smart girl. We at Our House Productions are ecstatic that we have her and got her for Code Switch. And yeah, I think she would be a good pool of knowledge just to even talk about her and how she tapped into that character.
So Code Switch, you can, we're gonna have the trailer in the show, and you can check it out on YouTube, and hopefully then sign up for future episodes coming in the future. We're now going to take a break and then come back with Marcus, because Marcus has got some pretty definitive views on race relations and other issues, political issues. And we're going to chat about some of those in just a second. Stay with us. We're back with Marcus John Adams, who is a film director, or I guess internet TV series director and writer and producer of a show called Code Switch, which we've seen the trailer of. It was pretty fantastic. But I had the opportunity to sit down with him a couple of days ago and really talk about a bunch of the current political issues that are going on. And I just finished a couple of shows on race relations, and I started to ask Marcus what his attitude was. And so he was pretty provocative, and I thought we'd share some of those with you. So Marcus, what do you think? Why did we have this catalyst in Minneapolis back a couple months ago lead to protests around the world, when there's been, police brutality and race issues for a couple 100 years, if not longer?
Well, you're right. It's not news. It's news, but it's not news that what's been happening. And I think let's name names here. So George Floyd was, I think, the straw that broke the camel's back. We saw this years ago with footage really being captured about police brutality with Rodney King. And we saw riots come from that. And then they kind of died down and the news cycle moved on. And the difference is with George Floyd was, I think it had, and in our previous conversation, I think it had something to do with everybody really and truly being at home and being stir crazy. And it was kind of a powder cake situation that, or even a perfect storm, that this happened and it erupted so harshly. I think now it was the document of you seeing the video and you see the time tick away and those 9 minutes go by and you see that this man is clearly suffering. And I think it was just so blatant that the wrongness in it, whether somebody wants to call it racism or not, I think everybody, no matter where you stood on the racism spectrum, saw that this was wrong.
You know, I think there's something about the inhumanity of it, the inhumane act, that, you know, you can see something that is a shot, and you know, it's gone. But to see it for 9 minutes, and to see a knee on someone's neck, and to hear him crying out and saying, "I can't breathe," and calling for his mother, it became so inhumane and so personal that it had to have a huge impact on you.
Well, you had to not. I think also us in the Black community could see ourselves in that situation and knew that what happened was not something that couldn't happen to them. It was so polarizing in the aspect of whether or not the cop was racist. And there's people who would say he was doing what he was supposed to, and, you know, we get into the semantics and of that George Floyd did have a little bit of a checkered past.
Yeah.
But what I would draw back from that is, you do the time, you do the crime. Everything that happened post and prior to George Floyd and his run-ins with the police have no bearing on how the police should have handled that situation. Whether George Floyd had robbed a bank years before, or George Floyd was an upstanding citizen who never had a parking ticket, that action was wrong. And I feel that now that we're weeks past that, people are looking into his past saying, well, he wasn't that great, but that doesn't mean that somebody doesn't deserve to be treated properly. And that's just where I'm coming from. It's solely that action was wrong. And then now you look back at it all and you see, you know what? You can't stop seeing that this is a continuing amount of repetition going on. And my problem is when people say it's not racist. Well, then what else do you call it when a particular race gets treated differently than any other race so many times?
So do you think anything's going to change? Is this going to be the catalyst to anything happen? You know, certainly it's created a bunch of protests. So there's now defund police motions across North America. Well,
yeah, I'll jump right on that. The defund the police situation is, and I know I'm going to upset a lot of people, but it's totally wrong. This is a very wrong thing to do. It doesn't make sense, and it's totally not thought out of. When people are saying defund the police, they want to take this power away from the police, and that's not the right thing. Because when we do that, who are we going to call when we're in a mode of stress, or if we are being attacked, or if we are being persecuted in any way? We need to call the police, and we need them to arrive. So if we don't give them the money to answer those 911 calls, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. What needs to happen when we talk about defunding the police is we need to go through the police's budget and make sure the bulk of money that we're spending is going in the right direction. And with that, I mean, let's look at Ontario. $1.1 billion in police funds are allocated to the police in Ontario. Is all of that going to the right thing? Is every department being given the right amount of money? Probably not, because that's what the situation we're in. But taking the money away, like Black Lives Matter of Canada wants to do, is they want to take away 50% of the police's budget, which is crazy, which won't work. The police cannot function that way. That's a very foolish attempt at solving the problem. What will solve the problem is us, like we're doing right now, having these conversations and us having a little bit of oversight. I mean, to take some people who have a little bit more financial literacy to look at the spending and say, can we accomplish what we need to accomplish with this money being moved around in proper ways? That's where we need to go.
Is there racism in Canada? Have you experienced racism?
150%. 150%. There is racism in Canada, and anybody who tells you differently His eyes are closed. What kind of makes me upset is we as Canadians think we got it. We're perfect. We know the right thing to do, and we say sorry all the time.
Aren't we a lot better than the United States in that regard?
I don't think so. I think we're almost just as bad, or if not worse. Here's why. Racism in the United States is somebody will come up to you and say racist things to you right to your face. That'll happen. They'll let you know who they are. But in Canada, it's a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. In Canada, it's, they'll read that name on that resume and say, that's a bit ethnic. I'm not going to hire this person. So it's a little bit more, the racism in Canada is in the shadows. Which is more deceitful and sneaky to me. I'd rather know who I'm dealing with right away and know that person is racist rather than this person does racist things in the dark and just won't hire people of color or that kind of a thing. An example I'll bring up is in Halifax, Africville. That is a town that was made up of African Canadians that town was denied the basic necessities that any town or city all has. They refused to give that city clean drinking water, sewage, garbage disposal, and we're not talking about a country down south in America. We're talking about we're talking about a town and a city here in Canada. That happened. That's history. And a lot of Canadians don't see that. When we look at even streets in Toronto, like Yonge Street, like Dundas Street, these families that helped to create Toronto and the GTA, what we know of now, they had slaves. They had slaves. It was documented. So I think us as Canadians need to do some self-reflecting. We can't keep pointing our finger at our neighbors to the south and say they need to get it together, because we actually need to do our part in changing that. And the only way that's going to change is when we start looking at people at merit, start looking at people from their skill set instead of their skin color. I'll give you another point there, Brian. When we look at the Peel system, which has been a little bit under fire as of lately,
the Peel Board of Education.
Yes, the Peel Board of Education, yeah, okay. Who's been a little bit under fire as of lately.
Not a lot.
Yeah, they have systematically put the African American or ethnic students in the category of applied instead of academic. Force them down that stream to say that they cannot go to university, because as you know, you need academic courses to get into a university, and systematically funneled them into applied so that they couldn't have a doctorate or be a doctor or get that engineering job. And that kind of aspect is the racism that I'm talking about. That's not right in front of your face.
You're extremely articulate. You're very well-educated. You're a good-looking guy. You've been successful. How did you get through this racist system and survive and prosper?
Adversity and the backing of my father. My dad was fighting for himself and for people who looked like him for 31 years. We talk about the society and the way the world was 30 years ago is very different. He's this tall black guy who is now a police officer in Canada, and kind of the stories he went through. And I was told at a very young age that it's going to be harder for you. You're gonna have to work 2 times as harder. And I don't want to have to share that and run that story with my children. Have to work 2 times harder just to get in the door. Not to get the job, but to get in the door. That's the unfairness that we're talking about. And that's the things that need to change. And we need to shine a light that I'm happy that's happening on the Peel Board about what's been going on, but we need to continually shine the light on these aspects that's happening. And we need to go back into the schools and educate, because that's how racism stops.
Educate how? Educate what?
So, for instance, Morgan Freeman was quoted in saying this, and a couple of other stars were, that I don't really believe in Black History Month. I have warmed up to that view, and I know it's going to be very polarizing, but this is the truth. putting Black history in a month is like your Christmas decorations that you take at Christmas time, you bring them out, you talk about it, and you put it away. That's not gonna work. We need to teach it as it is history. It is a part of history. The Canadian history that has been taught needs to include the bad part of history that we're a little bit ashamed of, so we know where to go. We can't just bury and change the narrative of the Canadian history to be this really shiny, nice, amazing place at the end of the Underground Railroad where everything was perfect, because that's not the truth. We need to speak the truth. We need to write about it. We need to talk about it in the classrooms. We need to have these debates. We need to have these debates with all people who are our friends. That's how it's going to change. The knowledge needs to be passed on so people know what to look for. Because I feel that a lot of my friends who aren't colored in any way don't understand what we're going through. And it's not necessarily their fault. And they're not racist for that. They're not bigots for that. They just don't know. And I think that's where some of the racism starts from.
What does a average Canadian need to know about anti-Black racism in Canada that would help them become less racist?
I think
not racist at all.
Yeah, I think what would help them would be being able to go out and feel comfortable going to a caravana.
No, but you were saying they need to know history. Black
yeah,
history,
they need to know
not
history,
just one.
But the only way they're going to know that is expose themselves. They got to dip their feet into the pool. So I'm not expecting them to go into a library and read the book, but I'm expecting them to go to cultural events and expose themselves to other cultures. That's the step they need. And then they can start asking the questions. Then they can turn to people who they've met at these events and these things and ask them about things. Why is it like this? How did you get your hair this way? Right? These questions won't seem as racially charged when they're coming from a place of knowledge.
So one of the things that you had told me is that we spent too much time talking about how we were the end of the Underground Railway. And I think you're in Oakville now. Oakville was one of the major terminuses of the Underground Railway and was and that's a point of pride in Oakville. But you said we need to tell people that there was slavery in Canada. Why is it helpful for us to know there was slavery in Canada?
Because when you start cherry picking your history, you don't know where you're going and you don't know where you came from and you can't learn. One of the other points that I bring up to people who, especially when I've had this conversation, when I spoke in front of my high school about this, was that Georgetown, which is about maybe 15, 20 minutes from Oakville, Georgetown had a Ku Klux Klan chapter. It's documented, it's there. So when we talk about the Underground Railroad ending here, I'm proud of it, I'm happy, but you gotta do your homework. You gotta understand that the plight of Black people happened here. It's something that that if we forget, we won't be able to understand the suffering that they go through, so that when we see people like me who now are struggling to get a footing in the world, we understand their pain. And we can understand then when situations happen like George Floyd, and there's so much pain that comes out of that through the rioting, that it's not just the George Floyd, but it's the Trayvon Martin. It's the, I can't even remember her name. It's the laundry list of people that have been through this suffering that we keep on reliving and not changing. So the frustration and the anger, as people might look at the rioting as bad, is not just a one incident thing. It's built up because the stories of these people have been forgotten.
In the US, they're toppling Confederate statues. In the UK, they're putting in the harbor statues of slave traders. Do you agree with that?
Well, okay, I'll ask you this question, Brian. Brian, when you go to a statue, why do you go to a statue? What is the purpose of a statue?
A piece of history.
To celebrate a monument to this person, right? So,
but you're telling me that we need to know our history, and these people are toppling statues and getting rid of history.
because we're celebrating people who shouldn't really be celebrated, that their past and their journey in their life is not one that is not the narrative that is out there, right? So when we look at it, it's like only as of 5 years ago, Martin Luther King had in Washington, D.C. has a monument. He didn't have one for the very longest time. I think he's more deserving than some of these Confederate soldiers are for having a statue to remember him by and what he stood for. I think we can talk about these people, but I don't think we need to have statues of these people for us to go and marvel at. If I'm going at a statue, it's something I'm proud of. And that's not something I think anybody should be proud of this person's history.
Well, I agree with you. I think they should be maybe put in museums, but they shouldn't be in town squares or in front of legislature.
No, of course
not.
not.
Let me ask you a couple other questions. What about Aunt Jemima? Is it right to get rid of Aunt Jemima?
The Aunt Jemima question. It has been a topic in my house and at the kitchen table many a time since the Quaker Oats family put that out there. This is my point. So I have been eating pancakes all my life, and not once have I felt guilty, being a Black person, that I was eating these pancakes. We have to also look at the fact that this Aunt Jemima caricature is indeed a caricature. It's not a real person. She's not a real person. She didn't exist. Now, the person
was the character a slave?
Yes, it was designed to look like, and I hate this term, but it was designed to look like a quote unquote mammy, that kind of housekeeping, Southern Black woman who would make the meals and look after the children. So it's a little bit on the edge of saying whether she was a slave or not, but when you do your homework, this is the truth and what people don't realize. The initial and first caricature of Aunt Jemima, and when she came onto the scene, was thought up by two white guys, Chris L. Rutt and Charles Underwood. They were the creators of this. They went to go see a particular show that was done in blackface that featured mammy-like characters and thought of this home kind of down south character to be the face of the pancake mix. Now, the original person who they chose to do it, this Black woman, her name was Nancy Green. Now, Nancy Green, when she was born into slavery. She was part of that. But as time went on and when she actually met up with these guys, she was a paid employee of them. And there are stories of a lot of African American women who would go out and promote this and were paid for it. Now, were they paid the proper wages? We obviously know they were not, but they were paid. So I kind of look at it almost as a place of empowerment for Black women to say, hey, this is something that back then, there was a job that was theirs that couldn't be taken away from them, and they made money for their families for it. I don't think we should wear it as a scar that now companies are trying to do, but when you go into this hypersensitive area about it, it seems a little disingenuous.
Uncle Ben's?
It doesn't seem like it does right.
Uncle Ben's?
Uncle Ben's, well, we're breaking up a marriage now. Now, Brian, Uncle Ben is going to be alone in the cupboard by himself. What is he going to do? No, I think that there's some gray and kind of not really appropriate connotations with it. But at the grand scheme of things, Brian, we have people being shot. I don't think we need to worry about Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben right now. The attention needs to go other places.
Saying we got to change the name of master bedroom to primary bedroom.
I thought that was the biggest farce out of everything I've heard over the last little while. It doesn't really matter. It's a master bedroom. It doesn't mean anything. It's the biggest bedroom. If you want to change it to the boss's bedroom or something like that, like it's so disingenuous. You're starting to take that part starts to take away from the true messages of what's going out. It clogs the the system of the true message. It has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. I think anybody who is ready to be upset about that, Brian, is not somebody who is ready to talk about the real issues. And companies that are monopolizing on that aspect of trying to look like they're on the forefront of awareness is wrong. Look at the Band-Aid company, you know, creating now Band-Aids of different skin tones. I think, and I don't even think, but that is a disingenuous route to go down. I've never put on a Band-Aid and got upset that it was, quote unquote, a white Band-Aid. It didn't matter to me. It was a Band-Aid. That's the means to the end. That's what it was for. Now creating a new line of products to sell to the Black people is monopolizing on the Black people in their face of pain. At the surface, it looks really great. Oh, they are with us. They understand what we're going through, but now you're going to make money off of our pain. That's where the disingenuous comes from. If they were to say, you know, we're going to have, this will be at a discounted price or be cheaper than the other price, sure, great. But it's something that did not need to be created and has not stopped racism because you've created a darker Band-Aid. That has stopped racism. I look back at their board of directors. Their board of directors is of 12. There is only one Black person on their board of directors. 6 out of the 12 are white males, and there is no Black female on the board of directors. So they've got some other ways for them to be putting Black people at the center of their company if they truly believe in that. And creating a new Band-Aid isn't that.
Isn't going to change things. Well, you know what? It's interesting chatting with you about these issues. I found you very provocative and interesting when we chatted. I think that the thing that I take from all of this is that I do think change is happening. And as you and I talked, I think that you know, Harvey Weinstein and a lot of the social media circus around him and the Me Too movement a couple of years ago really did change things for females. And I think that that the 9 minutes, and it's not social media circus, it's perfectly appropriate social media attention and media attention to such a disgusting thing that happened. And then the protests that, you know, you and I were discussing this the other day, but, you know, based on the video footage, a lot of those protests had more than half of them were whites that were protesting, often young. But as many whites as Blacks in those protests, which says to me that people, particularly young people, but people of all races and all colors, want change and want to respect. And yeah, I think you may be right with some of these comments in regards to Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's and Master Bedroom and Master Lock and stuff like that. But when people start paying attention to little things like that, it's because they're aware of things now that they haven't been aware of before. And they're paying attention to issues now that they haven't paid attention to before. And while I may or may not agree with some of those changes, I like the idea that we're asking questions about what's appropriate, whether we should have statues in squares to inappropriate people. And so I think that this is going to be the catalyst to change that Martin Luther King would have hoped for, and lots of other people hoped for, that didn't come previously, that may happen now. And I think that we've got the chance to make true change from a racism standpoint in North America, if not the world, because of not because of the 9 minutes, but because the 9 minutes created a huge uproar, and appropriately so.
Well, I agree with you there. I think we're like-minded in that I think that this will start. I'm very optimistic, though, on how much change will indeed happen, especially when we talk about from a policing standpoint and how the police are going to change and adapt their business structure and how they handle it. I don't know if that's going to have as much traction as I would like, but I am so happy that now my friends who don't fit the same race as me are asking these questions, wanting to learn.
You said you're optimistic. Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic because I really want us there. I want everything to change. I do. But then the reality sets in. And as you and I both know, there's a lot of red tape in government. Things take a long time to change in government. And Martin Luther King died years ago, and we're still dealing with the same issues that he was talking about, the same injustice. So is this going to be gasoline on the fire or another log on the fire is yet to be seen. But I think the major difference is everyday people like myself are having these conversations.
Marcus John Adams, thanks so much for joining us tonight on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I'll be back anytime you ask me to.
Awesome. Well, that's our show for tonight. Just a reminder, we're on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream us online at www.saga960am.ca, and you can get all my podcasts and most of my shows as videocasts as well on my website, briancrombie.com, either /podcasts or /videocasts. Have a great night. Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate it.